Jews understand the nature of the human condition as being one of rooted in paradox. A paradox is what seems an apparent contradiction that yet does have a resolution. Chazon Ish, we have quoted often, posed it that a Jew must master the discipline of living with seeming contradictions. His substantiation of his evidence that the Chazon Ish presented for that was that we're going to read that the climax of the 3 weeks on Tisha B'Av, Chas v'Shalom Mashiach doesn't come before then. Perhaps we'll read it then as reminiscent to understand of where we've been through. But the Tisha B'Av, we read that Klal Yisrael, the past, and it's Nevuah, it's Ruach HaKodesh, what will happen and has happened, in fact, through the generations. Ruach HaKodesh, in order for the Novi to be eligible for that extra dimension of spiritual insight, Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit from above, it's a kinship, partakes of prophecy. It is a kind of prophecy in low gear, but prophecy. It's not just normal insight, not just exceptionally incisive. In order to be eligible for that, Chazal teach us, the Gemara says, that David HaMelech had to be in a state of simcha. If the recipient of the Ruach HaKodesh is not, the Novi is not in a state of simcha, he is not the appropriate vessel to receive it. Simcha. Perhaps the part of the reason for that is, as the Maral teaches, that the simcha leads to shleimut, leads to perfection, to completeness. We approach completeness, having a comprehensive view of life and seeing the details, the parts, the pieces, how they fit in together. The Maral says that the shleimus, that this sense of a comprehensive grasp of the world, history, man, his place, leads to simcha, and simcha leads to a sense of completion. How do you break in the middle? That's what being a Torah Jew is about. In the interim, one lives with contradictions. That Eicha, Lamentations, had to be authored by Yirmiyahu HaNovi in a state of simcha. Lamentations, with all of the expressions of pain, the groaning, which are all instructive, didactic, that it's there to teach us something. It's not just there to release emotions. That's the difference between lahavdil, poetry, which is merely poetry, or nevuah, which partakes of poetry, but is also instructive for the individual, for the nation, for history. So a Jew has to live with contradictions. We've talked about the source, possibly for that primary challenge of being a human being, is rooted in the emphasis that the difference of opinion in the Shulchan Aruch that we find, code of law that we find, that between the Ramah and the Beis Yosef on the blessing that a Jew recites when his bodily functions are performing in a healthy manner. He's thankful, he says blessing, and the wording is mafli lasos. It's awesome that the Rebbeinu Shem has allowed our bodies and created us in such a manner, not just allowed, but designed us in such a manner as to be able to discard the waste and keep the vitamins that are necessary and that are crucial for human development. That's the way the Rebbeinu Shem designed. Why did he design us this way? Well, the Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the Mechaber, the Baal HaShulchan Aruch, he writes that it's the language, mafli lasos, is the complexity and the intricacy of this creature, and that how awesome this design is. The Ramah says it's the improbability of taking two seemingly separate, diverse, discrete entities, two realms of existence, the angel and the animal, and combining them together in a single person, in a human being. Mafli lasa, it's awesome to take those two possibilities and put them together. How it is that there are problems that many scientists, we'll talk about that another time, find in trying to merely attribute the development of man in a random fashion, and even if they're selective, even if the eons of time that they, according to their counting, trying to attribute it, doesn't work. It doesn't work. That a lump of flesh should make the qualitative breakthrough to be able to think abstract thoughts, that doesn't work. And of course, the mere existence of DNA, it's not so mere, but the DNA and how it processes the necessary development of the creation of the gene in a manner had to be there in place before anything else could be fed into that system to be processed. Okay, that's the design of it all is beyond comprehension. It seems that if somebody were a reasonable observer and did not have a bias, an unconscious need to prefer not to be monitored by the master creator, then it would be hard to really resist that kind of evidence. And such has been the discussion and the problems. But paradox, it's all about paradox. And living with paradox, resolving paradox. This week's Parsha, Pinchas takes an initiative to take a proactive, zealous kind of an initiative, which seems to be on the surface super surgical, and though there were extraordinary miracles that attended the execution of it, but it required a certain kind of passionate zealotry in order to take that initiative to stop the plague that had befallen Klal Yisrael as a result of this violation of sensitivity that the halachic system, that the Rebbeinu Shalom has ingrained in the Torah, man, that Am Yisrael's sensitivity to husbanding the sensitivity to application of sexual indulgence, and here in a wildly orgiastic manner to demonstrate it and to as a breach, as a challenge. What Zimri and Cosby had done, were doing, and Pinchas' initiative to end it, and the plague, as Klal Yisrael were yet sympathizing, unable to act, and it's collective responsibility for sharing in the reluctance to act. Pinchas acts. He consults with Moshe Rabbeinu, and he does act, though. His consultation, though, is also problematic, because later we have halacha that this state of being a zealot, the qualifications are that it has to be such a passion that he's acting. If he comes to ask us, we don't tell him to do it. So that problem is discussed technically, but basically it's the initiative of Pinchas. But what I would like to just note here is that Pinchas is rewarded a reward of peace. Brisi Olam, he's going to get a reward of peace that will come through him, to him first, and through him to the Kohanim, to Am Yisrael, and it's Brisi Shalom. Now, it would seem very paradoxical of all the rewards that he might get for this explosion of passionate initiative would be Shalom, would be peace. The answer is it is peace. It doesn't seem on the surface. It's the consummate paradox of what seems to be peace is not necessarily peace. As the Piaseczna said in the Warsaw Ghetto, the Jews were suffering unspeakable kinds of horrors and crimes, and he said the tefillah has to be like the tefillah we find in early on in Shmos, that the Rebbeinu Shalom is told, yes, Rebbeinu Shalom, we know that it's good for us, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. But good can mean long run. It can mean long run. And the short run, since the Rebbeinu Shalom is the only kind of an expediter of chesed, that it is always good, short run, long run, encompasses the past, the future, and all that is contemporaneous and the extensions of it, consequences of it at any given time in history. That's the way we understand that the Rebbeinu Shalom, God, is Gomel Chasodim Tovim. His kindnesses are good, they're essentially good. If it's kindness, it is good. Human kindness invariably has, along with it, side effects. Someone it is good, someone it isn't good. It's good short run, it's not good long run. It's good long run, it's not good short run. It doesn't always mean that we are going to see it, to be aware of it. It's a separate tefillah that we make. Hareini, the Rebbeinu Shalom, we pray, please let us see, let us envision your chesed. That's a separate tefillah. It doesn't always work for us that the manifestation of it as we witness it with our human eyes in a limited way will see it. But essentially we're saying only the Rebbeinu Shalom, who is the Kaina HaKol, who has one, he's created this universe. It's his universe. And that was the initial act of kindness, because the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't need to create, to have a creation, to have creatures. Why did he do that? I don't know. But it was an expression of chesed. It's not enough to say he wanted to, he needed. He didn't need. There's no such thing as need. But it was an expression of his chesed that he created creatures who are sufficiently knowledgeable to understand their place in the world and wrestle, grapple, wrangle with the paradoxes in order to resolve the being part man, part angel, part animal, part angel, man, this new creation. And here, when Pinchas takes this initiative, that seems to be such an extraordinarily surgical kind of an initiative to take this, like the Piaseczner said, if somebody happened into an operating room in the middle of a delicate operation, this entity from another planet would say, what a cruel creature this surgeon is. He doesn't know that the surgeon is saving the life of the patient. But though this is true, says the Piaseczner, a human being that has a son that is lo aleinu being operated on, he cannot stand there, be there when the operation is taking place because he's too emotionally involved. Surgeons don't operate on their own kin, and the father would elect not to even be present to see, to witness it, because he's too emotionally engaged. So we're asking, said Moshe Rabbeinu expresses this through the psukim in Shmos, that Rebbeinu Shalom listen to the cry. We are not second guessing whether it is ultimately good for us. It is what we need. It's the remedy we need. We're asking that relate Rebbeinu Shalom not as the surgeon that is administering the necessary surgery, the necessary procedure, but as the father who his Rahmanis is such that to reduce the effect and the impact of the pain at the moment. We need more kinds of anesthetic to deal with the challenges of the suffering that are good for us, designed in a manner to be ultimately beneficial, but this is our urgency, and we ask for the listening ear from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Similarly, that juggling of the paradox of what is good, what is long-range good, short-range good, Pinchas takes the initiative. And Pinchas' initiative is going to to be going to stop the plague and simultaneously, of course, the Chilul Hashem, the desecration, the profaning of the name of God, and the deleterious effect it's having on the spirituality of the collective body of Klal Yisrael, as they had been delinquent in not having stopped it before it got started or as it was getting started, and correcting it. So Pinchas takes that initiative, and he gets Brisi Shalom, which means it's going to be a comprehensive kind of a piece which will encompass all the pieces of the puzzle, and there's nothing left out. There'll be no side effects. Does it simply appear that way? No. Are there clues? Yes, the miraculous manner in which he surgically expedited the execution in a way which was unnaturally unique. Yet, we need siyata d'shmaya to be able to recognize and see and witness that. Similarly, as some Meforshim do compare it to the Ir Nidachas, by Ir Nidachas, a city which is totally committed to idol worship, and that city has to be wiped out. There's a machlekes, whether it's just a theoretical proposition, or in fact it actually might have happened in history, did happen in history, according to one man diyama. But leave that aside for a moment. The verse says either way, that even if it's merely conceptual, that v'nosati l'cho rachamim, I'll give you mercy, v'richamecha, and have mercy upon you. How does that come in? Says the Or Chaim HaKodesh, is an other Meforshim touch on it, is that when people do things that are of a kind of emotional threshold and action, it has an effect upon their personality. The Chinuch says this a number of times. I believe the first time he says it is by the mitzvah of Shviras Ha'etzem, not to chew the bone of the Paschal lamb, because that's behaving as a poor man, as a needy man would behave. And we are royalty that night, and as royalty, we must do those things that reinforce and remind our inner unconscious, our consciousness, our awareness of connecting to the ideals of Am Yisrael mission statement from Mitzrayim till today. Says the Chinuch that if a good man does evil things, he'll eventually lose his threshold of sensitivity to the good. If an evil man is bribed to do good, he'll develop a bit more of a warmth and a sensitivity to the good. Because a human being is a psychological, not just a logical creature. He's not merely a soul, he's a body and a soul. And it's the interfacing and interplay between these parts, conflicting, hopefully to coordinate, but most of the time, for most of us, it's the coordination and balancing of this interfacing of body and soul. And the only methodology that we have to successfully micromanage this extraordinary challenge, resolving these paradoxes, is the halacha system. The halacha is about man being a holech, being a creature that is faced with a moving, mobile, changing world, and having at every juncture to make decisions and expedite the decisions, not just mouth them, but to expedite them and to be able to put them into action. And this kind of passion for an initiative is Levi and Shimon were those who took that proactive, aggressive position when Dinah was abducted, in the story of Shechem, and Yaakov, their father, chastises them for that activity. Throughout history, then, we're going to see that Levi masters the discipline to capture this energy and this inclination and use it in a positive fashion, and therefore to take the initiative by the Chet HaEgel, by the sin, the transgression of the golden calf. Shimon, it's from the tribe of Shimon, is Zimri, his tribe, his Shevet, defends him, confronts Pinchas in a sense, and the free will has kicked in. Man's bchira allows him to take the root energies of his personality and in the flow of events of history and make his choices, use it in a positive way or use it in a negative way. Ban Hashem should give us all the ability to make the right choices and to help resolve the core paradoxes of being a human being with all of the extraordinary dimensions of reaching for the angelic and rooted in the animalistic. Hashem Yitain, the Rebbeinu Hashem should give us that ability to resolve the paradoxes.